The views are essential for my influencer brand. Vanessa's voice dripped with condescension as she posed against her floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering cityscape. Besides, someone needs to handle the building maintenance issues. On site, it's not like you have an active social life to interrupt. I stood in the gleaming marble lobby of the Monarch, our family's prestigious condominium building, clenching my fists as my younger sister flaunted her new 3,000-square-foot penthouse. The same penthouse that should have been co-owned by both of us after our grandfather's passing. Little did she know that a routine building code inspection would soon unravel everything she thought she was entitled to and reveal secrets our family had buried in the foundation for decades. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Rebecca Chen, and at 31, I watched in stunned silence as my parents handed over our family's crown jewel to my 28-year-old sister while I was relegated to what they called a practical living arrangement, a converted basement unit that hadn't seen renovations since the 1990s and doubled as the building's maintenance office. The same basement where I now stood, 3 weeks later, staring at a mysterious crack in the wall that would change everything. "Now, girls," my mother interjected with that familiar placating tone she'd perfected over years of Vanessa's tantrums. "You both received valuable living spaces. The Monarch has been the Chen family legacy for 3 generations, and now you each have a stake in continuing that tradition." A stake. Right. Vanessa got the $3.5 million penthouse with panoramic city views and a private rooftop terrace, while I got the 700-square-foot afterthought that shared walls with the building's mechanical room and laundry facilities. The constant hum of industrial washers and dryers had become the soundtrack to my new life. "Don't forget about the inspection next month, Becca," Vanessa called out as she stepped into the private elevator that would whisk her 32 floors up to her luxury eyrie. "All those little maintenance issues are your department now. That's why it makes sense for you to be down there." The elevator doors closed on her perfectly practiced smile, cutting off any response I might have mustered. I gripped the keys to my new underground kingdom so tightly they left imprints in my palm. The worst part wasn't even the unfairness of it all. It was how everyone acted like this was completely reasonable. Of course, the younger, more photogenic, more socially connected sister deserved the penthouse. Never mind that I'd spent the last 7 years managing the Monarch's operations while Vanessa was busy building her lifestyle brand through a series of sponsored posts and collaborations funded by our parents' seemingly bottomless generosity. The Monarch wasn't just any building. Constructed in 1937, it was one of the city's first luxury residential towers, commissioned by my great-grandfather Elias Chen after he immigrated from Shanghai and built a real estate empire from nothing. Its Art Deco architecture and opulent interiors had been featured in architectural magazines and design blogs, and its residents included some of the city's most influential families, celebrities, and business leaders. For generations, the penthouse had been the Chen family residence, passed down from one caretaker to the next, until now. "Rebecca, honey," my mother touched my arm gently, pulling me from my thoughts. "Why don't we go see about getting you settled in? I bought some lovely throw pillows that would brighten up your space." My space. All 700 square feet of it, with its low ceilings, limited natural light, and the constant mechanical symphony of the building's inner workings vibrating through the walls. But I forced a smile because that's what I always did. Keep the peace, don't make waves, be grateful for what you get. "Sure, Mom," I said, following her toward the service elevator that would take us down to my new home. Though I think it might take more than throw pillows. The basement apartment was exactly as I remembered from the initial walkthrough. Beige walls that had yellowed with age, worn laminate flooring that curled at the edges, and a kitchenette that looked like it had been installed when Clinton was president. The previous occupant had been our longtime building manager, Mr. Gaines, who had lived here rent-free until his retirement last month. "It has so much potential," my mother said brightly, running her hand along a dusty window well that offered a ground-level view of passing feet on the sidewalk outside. And think of the convenience. You're right here if any residents need assistance after hours. Of course, because even with this generous gift, I was still expected to manage the building's operations. Meanwhile, Vanessa would be hosting Rooftop, soiree and creating content about her amazing, self-made luxury lifestyle for her hundreds of thousands of followers. "Mom," I started, trying to keep my voice steady, "can we talk about why Vanessa got the penthouse? I've been managing this building for 7 years. I know every resident, every maintenance issue, every detail of its history and operations." "Oh, honey?" My mother cut me off with that dismissive wave I knew so well. "You know your sister needs the space for her career. Her social media presence and connections are so important for the building's image and prestige, and she's always been more visual. Visual. Right. Because posting filtered photos of avocado toast and luxury product placements counted as a career these days. Besides," my mother continued, avoiding my gaze as she fussed with her designer bag, "after that unfortunate incident with the Goldstein's renovation project, your father thought it best to have you focus on the operational side of things." The Goldstein incident. 3 months ago, a contractor had installed non-regulation plumbing fixtures in one of our luxury units, causing significant water damage to the unit below. I had caught the issue during a routine inspection and handled the crisis efficiently, getting emergency repairs done within hours, but apparently that wasn't good enough. One complaint from Mrs. Goldstein about the inconvenience, and suddenly I was incompetent. Never mind that I'd prevented 3 other major disasters this year alone, or that our occupancy rate and property values were the highest they'd been in a decade under my management. One mistake and I was relegated to the basement, while Vanessa, who couldn't tell a circuit breaker from a light switch, got the penthouse. I was about to argue further when my phone buzzed, a text from Mr. Rothstein in 14B about a malfunctioning garbage disposal. Perfect timing, as always. "Duty calls," I said, already heading for the door. "Thanks for the pillows, Mom." "Oh, and Rebecca," my mother called after me, "don't forget the building's 85th anniversary gala is in 6 weeks. Vanessa's handling the planning, but she might need some logistical support." Of course she was, because planning parties was apparently more valuable than actually running the building that made those parties possible. The next few days passed in a blur of unpacking boxes and addressing resident complaints. Every time, I heard the private elevator stop at the top floor, carrying another delivery of furniture or decor for Vanessa's content creation spaces. I felt my resentment grow. But I buried myself in work, doing what I'd always done. Being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who kept things running while others took the credit. It wasn't until Friday evening, after dealing with a power surge that knocked out half the building's smart home systems, that I finally had a moment to really look at my new apartment. The space was small but had good bones, high ceilings for a basement unit, original moldings that had somehow survived decades of neglect, and a surprising amount of built-in storage. With some work, it could be not horrible. I was examining a persistent leak in the bathroom when something odd caught my eye, a slight discoloration in the wall near the floor, forming a perfect rectangle about 2 feet wide. On closer inspection, the drywall texture was slightly different from the surrounding area, as if it had been patched at some point. Curious, I tapped on the wall, hearing a hollow sound that seemed out of place for what should have been a solid foundation wall. Heart racing slightly, I grabbed a screwdriver from my toolkit and gently prodded at the edges of the discolored rectangle. To my surprise, the drywall gave way easily, revealing what appeared to be a small access panel that had been painted over multiple times. With trembling hands, I carefully pried open the panel. Behind it was a small recess in the concrete foundation wall, and inside lay a leather portfolio, covered in dust, but otherwise well preserved. When I pulled it out and opened it, I found myself looking at blueprints and documents bearing my great-grandfather's signature dated 1937, the year the monarch was built. To my descendants, the cover letter began in elegant handwriting. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I have hidden these documents where only a true caretaker would think to look. The monarch holds more secrets than our family has acknowledged, and more value than they know, to measure. I sat back against the bathroom wall, my mind spinning. According to our family history, Elias Chen had commissioned the monarch as his architectural masterpiece after making his fortune in real estate development. But as I carefully examined the blueprints and accompanying notes, a different story began to emerge. A story of partnership, betrayal, and a secret that had been sealed in these walls for nearly a century. A loud thump from above, probably Vanessa rearranging her imported furniture for the perfect casual luxury Instagram shot, jolted me back to the present. I quickly took photos of several pages, then carefully returned the portfolio to its hiding place. Something told me I should keep this discovery to myself, at least for now. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. Emergency meeting tomorrow about the anniversary gala. Don't be late. Wear something presentable. Potential sponsors will be there. I looked around my tiny basement apartment at the boxes still waiting to be unpacked, at the mysterious panel in the wall that had led me to this discovery. Maybe being relegated to the basement wasn't a punishment after all. Maybe it was exactly where I needed to be. The next morning, I arrived at the Penthouse precisely on time, wearing my most presentable outfit, a charcoal pencil skirt and ivory blouse that had served me well through countless resident meetings and property showings. Vanessa opened the door wearing what appeared to be loungewear that probably cost more than my monthly salary, her hair and makeup already camera-ready despite the early hour. "Finally," she said, ushering me into her immaculately decorated living room where floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city sprawling below us like a personal kingdom. "Mom and Dad are on their way up. We need to finalize the gala plans." The Penthouse had been transformed in just a few weeks. Gone were the classic furnishings and family heirlooms that had given the space its timeless elegance. In their place was an explosion of contemporary luxury, all white marble, brass accents, and strategically placed designer items that would photograph well for her followers. Our great-grandfather would have had a heart attack. Now, Vanessa continued, pulling out a rose gold tablet with her monogrammed case. "I'm thinking we showcase the building's evolution, legacy reimagined as our theme. Out with the stuffy old history, in with the aspirational lifestyle concept. Maybe even announce some modernization plans for the common areas." "Modernization?" I interrupted, unable to help myself. "The monarch is a registered historical landmark. We can't just, oh, don't be so stuck in the past." She waved off my concern with perfectly manicured fingers. "Nobody wants to live in a museum. We need to attract the right kind of residents and investors, people who understand the future of urban luxury living, the right kind. Like the crypto millionaire she'd approved for 26B last month, who'd already received 4 noise complaints and tried to install a hot tub on his balcony." Before I could argue further, our parents arrived, my father beaming with pride as he took in Vanessa's decorating choices. "Stunning," he declared, kissing her cheek. "You've really brought this place into the 21st century, sweetheart." I thought about the portfolio hidden in my bathroom wall, about the history they were so eager to erase, but I held my tongue as Vanessa unveiled her grand vision for the anniversary gala. It would be quite an event, I had to admit. She'd thought of everything: celebrity chef catering, live entertainment, signature cocktails, even a documentary crew to capture the evolution of the monarch's legacy. Everything except, what about the building code inspection? I asked quietly. They all turned to look at me. "What inspection?" Vanessa asked, frowning. I took a deep breath. "The city's new historical building safety initiative. All buildings, over 75 years old, need to undergo a comprehensive inspection before they can host events with over 100 guests. It's scheduled for next week. The inspector will need access to all areas of the building, including the original structural elements. Can't you just handle that? My father demanded. That's operational stuff. Your department. I will, I replied calmly. But given the extensive renovations Vanessa is proposing for the gala, I thought everyone should be aware. The inspector will need to approve any structural changes, even temporary ones. Well, make sure they do, Vanessa said, dismissively. I've already invited the editor of Architectural Digest to cover the event. If she only knew what I'd found in my walls, what secrets this building held. But looking at their excited faces, I realized they weren't ready for the truth. Not yet. The building inspection would happen the week before the gala, and with it, everything they thought they knew about the monarch and our family would change forever. I just had to wait. As I rode the service elevator back down to my basement apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Anticipation. For once, being overlooked and underestimated might work to my advantage. While they were busy planning their grand reimagining of our legacy, I would be uncovering the truth about what that legacy really meant. The elevator doors opened to the basement level, and instead of feeling like I was descending into exile, it felt like I was stepping into a secret command center. My phone buzzed with another resident complaint, and I smiled to myself. Let Vanessa have her penthouse views and social media fame. I had something much more valuable, the truth buried in these walls, waiting to be revealed. And in just a few weeks, when the building inspector arrived, everyone would finally see it. The building. Inspection was set for exactly 2 weeks before the gala, which gave me precious little time to understand what I'd found hidden in my wall. That Sunday morning, with most of the building's wealthy residents out for brunch or weekend getaways, I carefully extracted the leather portfolio from its hiding place again. With a cup of coffee beside me and classical music playing softly to mask the sound of the laundry machines, I spread the contents across my small dining table. The blueprints were extraordinary, detailed architectural drawings of the monarch, but with significant differences from the building as it currently existed. The most striking was a series of interconnected spaces beneath the building, spaces that, according to our current plans, shouldn't exist at all. Provisional cold storage and emergency shelter design, read the notations in elegant script, reinforced to withstand structural compromise above. According to the date stamps, these modifications had been made to the original design in 1939, as tensions in Europe escalated toward war. But that wasn't the most intriguing discovery. Tucked within the blueprints was a thin journal with entries, written in 2 distinct hands. One I recognized as my great-grandfather's from family documents, and another more delicate script that I didn't recognize. The entries alternated, like a conversation across time. Liu has finalized the shelter reinforcements, my great-grandfather had written in October 1939. The board remains unaware of the modifications. They would never approve wasting resources on safety measures for the service staff. But I cannot, in good conscience, leave them unprotected if the worst happens. The reply in the unknown handwriting. The additional cost is minimal compared to the peace of mind. I've incorporated the ventilation systems as we discussed, disguised as standard utility conduits. Your name may be on the building, Elias, but our vision is shared. History may forget my contribution, but the walls will remember. I sat back, my coffee forgotten. Liu? There was no Liu in our family history, at least none that had ever been mentioned in connection with the monarch. According to the carefully curated family narrative, Elias Chen had single-handedly commissioned and overseen every detail of the building's construction, his crowning achievement after building a real estate empire from nothing. Yet here was evidence of a partnership, a collaboration that had apparently been erased from our family's story. And even more intriguing were the references to hidden spaces beneath the building, spaces that weren't on any of the current floor plans. My phone rang, jolting me from my thoughts. It was Vanessa. Rebecca, I need you to handle something, she said without preamble when I answered. The contractor says we need special permits for the lighting installation I want for the gala. Something about historic preservation restrictions? Can you just take care of it? I'm doing a sponsored meditation retreat this afternoon and my phone will be off. Vanessa, you can't just... Thanks, you're the best. Oh, and can you meet with the documentary crew tomorrow? They want B-roll of the building's operational elements. You know, the boring stuff. Perfect for your department. Gotta go. She hung up before I could respond. Typical. I stared at my phone for a moment, then back at the documents spread across my table. An idea began to form. Fine, I murmured to my empty apartment. I'll meet with the documentary crew. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called in a personal day. In the 7 years I'd worked as the Monarch's manager, I'd accumulated over 2 months of unused vacation time. If there was ever a moment to use some of it, it was now. Instead of meeting Vanessa's documentary crew, I called an old college friend who now worked as a structural engineer specializing in historical buildings. May? It's Rebecca Chen. Remember that favor you owe me from when I helped you pass architectural history? I'm collecting. 3 hours later, Mei Lin stood beside me in the basement utility room of the Monarch, studying the building's current. Floor plans with a professional's critical eye. These service areas don't make sense, she said, pointing to a section near my apartment. The load-bearing calculations are off. According to these, there should be additional support structures here and here, but they're not accounted for in the renovations from the 80s. Could there be hidden spaces? Rooms that were sealed off during renovations? I asked, trying to keep the excitement from my voice. May looked thoughtful. It's not uncommon in buildings this old, especially if they underwent modifications during wartime. Do you have any original blueprints? I hesitated only briefly before pulling out my great-grandfather's hidden documents. These never came from me, I said as I handed them over. May's eyes widened as she examined the yellowed pages. Rebecca, these are incredible. The detail work alone. Wait. She stopped at the plans showing the subterranean areas. These spaces definitely aren't on the current plans. According to this, there should be an entire sublevel beneath us right now. How would we access it? I asked, heart racing. If I were designing a hidden shelter, May said, tracing the blueprints with her finger, I'd disguise the entrance as something utilitarian, something nobody would look twice at. Her finger stopped on a marking near what was now my apartment, like a maintenance closet. We looked at each other, then at the unassuming door across the utility room, the door labeled electrical access, authorized personnel only, that had always been assumed to be a small closet housing circuit breakers. Do you have the key? May asked. I jingled my master key ring. I have all the keys. The door opened easily enough, revealing a cramped space filled with electrical panels. But when May pressed on the back wall with determined precision, something unexpected happened. A section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow passage beyond. Motion sensor flashlights, May muttered, pulling small lights from her bag. Never explore unknown structural spaces without them. The passage led to a steep set of concrete stairs descending into darkness. As we carefully made our way down, the air grew cooler and surprisingly fresh. The ventilation system mentioned in the journal was apparently still functioning after all these decades. At the bottom of the stairs, we entered a space that took my breath away, a large room, perhaps 2,000 square feet, with several smaller chambers branching off from it. Despite decades of abandonment, the space was in remarkable condition: sealed concrete floors, reinforced walls, and evidence of what had once been a comprehensive emergency shelter. This is amazing, May whispered, her voice filled with professional admiration. The engineering work is decades ahead of its time, the ventilation system alone. But I was drawn to something else, a desk in what appeared to be a small office area, still holding papers and personal effects as if its occupant had just stepped away. On the wall above hung a framed photograph I'd never seen before. My great-grandfather Elias Chen standing proudly beside a Chinese woman in professional attire, both of them holding architectural tools in front of the monarch during its construction. The inscription at the bottom read, Elias Chen and Liu Wei-ming, Chief Architects of the Monarch 1937, Chief Architects, plural. "Rebecca," May called from across the room, "you need to see this." She stood before a large metal cabinet. Inside, perfectly preserved, were hundreds of documents, technical drawings, correspondence, and photographs chronicling the true history of the monarch's creation. And at the center of it all was Liu Wei-ming, a brilliant female architect whose contribution had been completely erased from the building's official history. "According to these," May said, carefully examining the papers, "she designed over 60% of the building, including all of the innovative structural elements that made it famous. Why isn't she credited anywhere?" My hands trembled as I pulled out a sealed envelope addressed simply, "To the finder." Inside was a letter written in the same delicate script from the journal. "If you are reading this," it began, "then you have discovered what the Chen family has sought to hide for generations. Elias and I created the monarch as equal partners. But when the board learned that a woman, and a Chinese woman at that, had designed their prestigious building, they threatened to withdraw all funding. Elias fought for me, but ultimately we made a devil's bargain. My designs would be used, but his name alone would appear on them." I continued reading aloud, my voice echoing in the concrete chamber. "The shelter you now stand in was our secret act of rebellion, a space designed for those the board considered expendable, the service staff, the maintenance workers, the invisible people who make their luxury possible. Remember, the true value of a building lies not in how it looks from the penthouse, but in how it protects those at its foundation." May and I spent hours documenting everything we found, photographing documents, capturing video of the space, recording measurements and structural details. By the time we emerged from the hidden shelter, evening had fallen, and my phone was flooded with missed calls and increasingly irritated texts from Vanessa about the documentary crew I'd stood up. "This changes everything about the inspection," May said as we sat in my apartment, surrounded by our findings. "These spaces need to be evaluated for safety, especially if your sister is planning a major event. Some of these systems integrate with the building's main infrastructure. That's why they're still functioning after all this time." "If the inspector discovers the shelter," I began. "They absolutely will," May confirmed. "The discrepancies in the load calculations alone will raise red flags. Plus, there are access points from other areas of the basement level. See these markings? That's likely another concealed entrance near the north stairwell." I thought about the anniversary gala, about Vanessa's grand plans to reimagine our family's legacy, about the documentary crew capturing it all for posterity, about the truth that had been buried beneath our feet for generations. "The inspection is in 10 days, I said. "What do you think I should do with all this until then?" May considered this carefully. "From a structural engineering standpoint, nothing in what we found suggests the building is unsafe. Quite the opposite. Liu's designs are extraordinary, and these hidden spaces actually enhance the building's structural integrity. But from a historical perspective," she looked me directly in the eyes, "this is significant, Rebecca. Liu Wei-ming deserves recognition for her work. Your great-grandfather clearly wanted her contribution acknowledged, or he wouldn't have preserved all this evidence." I nodded slowly, looking around my small basement apartment with new eyes. I'd been so resentful of being relegated to this space, seeing it as a punishment or a consolation prize. But maybe, just maybe, I was exactly where I needed to be, where I could discover the truth that had been waiting patiently in these walls for someone who would actually look. My phone buzzed again, Vanessa demanding I come up to the penthouse, immediately to explain my unprofessional behavior with her documentary crew. For once, I didn't jump to respond. I need to approach this carefully, I told May as I walked her to the lobby. My family is complicated. Families usually are, she replied with a knowing smile. But Rebecca? That woman's work deserves to be known. Don't let it stay buried. After May left, I returned to my apartment and carefully secured the documents in a waterproof lockbox, which I then hid in a different location, behind a loose panel in my closet. The building inspection would reveal some of what we'd found, but how that revelation unfolded was still within my control. I finally texted Vanessa back. Sorry about today. Something urgent came up with the building systems. I'll explain everything at the inspection next week. Her reply was immediate. Whatever. Just make sure it doesn't interfere with the gala plans. The feature in Architectural Digest is confirmed. I smiled to myself as I prepared for bed, the weight of the building above me no longer feeling oppressive but protective, as if the very walls Liu had designed were watching over me, waiting for her story to finally be told. The next day, instead of immediately confronting my family with what I'd discovered, I did something more strategic. I began researching Liu Wei-ming, trying to uncover whatever fragments of her history might exist outside our family's censored narrative. The building. Inspection was coming, and when it did, I needed to be armed with more than just blueprints and photographs. I needed the whole truth about the woman whose legacy had been buried beneath the monarch for almost a century, and whose story was about to change everything about how we saw our family's celebrated past. My search for information about Liu Wei-ming led me to the City Historical Society archives, housed in a stately limestone building downtown. The archivist, an older woman named Dr. Eleanor Blackwood, peered at me over her reading glasses when I inquired about architectural records from the 1930s. The Chen Building? She repeated, recognition flashing in her eyes. Interesting timing. We just received a donation of materials from that era. Personal effects from the estate of Walter Hargrove. Who's Walter Hargrove? I asked. He was the city's building commissioner from 1935 to 1952, Dr. Blackwood explained, leading me through the climate-controlled archives. His family found boxes of his papers during an estate clear-out. Nobody's had time to properly catalog them yet. An hour later, I sat at a research table surrounded by dusty folders containing correspondence, permit applications, and inspection reports. Most were routine administrative materials, but then I found it, a formal complaint filed by Walter Hargrove regarding the monarch's building permit in 1937. Application lists Elias Chen as sole architect, the document stated. However, reliable sources confirm substantial design work by L.W. Ming. Investigation recommended regarding potentially fraudulent permit submission. My heart raced as I turned the page to find a handwritten note attached. Investigation closed. By order of Mayor's office. Political considerations supersede regulatory concerns. Permit to proceed as submitted. Dr. Blackwood noticed my excitement. Found something interesting? I hesitated, then decided to take a chance. I'm trying to learn about an architect named Liu Wei-ming who may have worked on my family's building, the Monarch. Dr. Blackwood's eyebrows shot up. Liu Wei-ming? Well, that's a name I haven't heard in decades. She lowered her voice. Come with me. She led me to her private office and unlocked a cabinet, removing a worn leather-bound book. This is the unpublished memoir of Harriet Stanton, one of the first female architects licensed in this city. I've been editing it for potential publication. She flipped to a marked page and pointed to a passage. The most brilliant architectural mind I encountered was not among my American colleagues, but in a Chinese immigrant named Liu Wei-ming. Educated at Shanghai's top technical institute, she designed solutions that left the rest of us in awe. Yet no firm would hire a Chinese woman, so she worked in the shadows for those who would take credit for her genius. Rumor had it that the Monarch, celebrated for its innovative structure, was largely her creation, though she was never publicly acknowledged. I read the passage twice, my throat tight with emotion. Why isn't she mentioned in any official records? The 1930s weren't kind to immigrant women with ambition, Dr. Blackwood said gently, especially Chinese immigrants during that period. For her work to be built at all, she likely had to accept anonymity. Or form a partnership with someone who had the right connections, I murmured. Like Elias Chen, Dr. Blackwood nodded. A successful Chinese-American businessman would still face discrimination, but he could at least get a meeting with investors. She studied me with sudden realization. Chen? Are you related to Elias Chen? He was my great-grandfather, I admitted. Dr. Blackwood's expression softened. Then perhaps you should see this too. She pulled a large archival folder from another cabinet. Inside was a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1963, a small obituary that most would have overlooked. Liu Wei-ming, 68, passed away peacefully on March 4, 1963. A talented draftswoman who contributed to several significant buildings in our city, she is survived by no immediate family. Service is private. Beneath it was a handwritten note in faded, "Ingot are paid for by the Chen Family Trust." My family paid for her obituary, I whispered, and kept some connection to her until the end, Dr. Blackwood observed. That suggests something more meaningful than mere professional exploitation. I spent the rest of the day combing through every reference to the monarch in the archives. While Liu was never credited in published materials, I found subtle threads, connecting her to the building, a mention in an architectural journal of unusual Eastern influences in the support structures, a note in a builder's diary about the Chinese lady with the brilliant beam calculations, and a photograph of a construction crew where a woman stood partially obscured at the edge, blueprint in hand. By closing time, Dr. Blackwood had become invested in my search. The Historical Society is hosting a panel on overlooked architects next month, she said as I prepared to leave. If you find concrete evidence of Liu's work, we would be very interested. I think I can do better than that, I replied, thinking of the hidden shelter and its treasure trove of documentation. But I need to wait for something first. That something was the building inspection, now just 5 days away. In the meantime, I had another confrontation to handle. As expected, Vanessa was waiting when I returned to the Monarch, having cornered me in the lobby. She wore athleisure wear that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her expression a perfect mix of annoyance and condescension. "Where have you been? The documentary crew rescheduled for tomorrow, and the event planner needs finalized floor plans for the gala. I've been covering for you all day." "Covering for me? How exactly?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "I had to personally give Mrs. Davidson from 12B directions to the service elevator when her regular one was being maintained," she said, as if describing extraordinary heroism. "That's your job, not mine." "And planning this gala is supposed to be your job," I countered. "Yet somehow I'm handling the permit applications, venue approvals, and vendor coordination." "Because that's the boring administrative stuff," she said, with a dismissive wave. "I'm focused on the creative vision and social connections that will make this event noteworthy." Before I could respond, the lobby doors opened and my father strode in, impeccably dressed as always. His face brightened when he saw Vanessa, then took on a more measured expression when he noticed me. "My girl's hard at work," he said jovially. "How are the gala preparations coming along?" "Wonderfully," Vanessa gushed. "I've confirmed 3 influencers with over 1 million followers each, and Architectural Digest is sending their top photographer. Rebecca is handling the logistics." My father nodded approvingly. "Excellent use of your strengths." He turned to me. "Speaking of logistics, I heard from Wilson at the city planning department that there's some kind of inspection scheduled. It's a standard safety review for historic buildings," I explained. "Especially before major events. It's been on the calendar for months." "Well, make sure it goes smoothly," he instructed. "We don't need any complications so close to the gala." The Chen name still carries weight at City Hall. Use it if necessary. The casual assumption that we could simply override regulatory requirements made my skin crawl. Was this how the monarch had always operated? How many corners had been cut over the years? How many inspections smoothed over to maintain the eye? Building's prestigious image? Actually, I said carefully, I've been preparing for this inspection thoroughly. The inspector is Patricia Diaz. She has a reputation for being extremely detail-oriented, especially with historical structures. My father's expression darkened slightly. Diaz? I don't know her. Wilson usually sends someone more accommodating. The Historical Building Division operates independently, I explained. They're particularly interested in the monarch because of its architectural significance. Well, just make sure she focuses on what's necessary for the event approval, he said dismissively. No need to turn this into some exhaustive historical investigation. If he only knew. Of course, I said, keeping my expression neutral. I'll give her exactly what she needs to see. The next morning, instead of meeting with Vanessa's documentary crew as scheduled, I spent 2 hours on a video call with May, reviewing every detail of what we'd found in the hidden shelter. She had created digital renderings of the original, blueprints, overlaying them with current building plans to highlight the discrepancies. The inspection will definitely reveal the existence of these spaces, she confirmed. What's not certain is how thoroughly they'll investigate once they find them. That might depend on how you present the information. What do you mean? You could present this as a potential safety concern, unknown spaces that need evaluation, May suggested. Or you could present it as a significant historical discovery that enhances the building's value and legacy. I considered this. The second approach would certainly be more appealing to my family. It's also more honest, May pointed out. Liu's work is remarkable. These hidden areas actually make the monarch more structurally sound, not less. She was designing with wartime safety considerations that were decades ahead of standard practices. After our call, I created a comprehensive package of information about the hidden shelter and Liu Weiming's contributions. If I was going to reveal this history, I wanted to control the narrative, to ensure Liu received the recognition she deserved, rather than having her work treated as a regulatory problem to be handled. That afternoon, I finally met with Vanessa's documentary crew, a pair of earnest filmmakers who had been hired to create a legacy piece about the monarch for the gala. They followed me through the building's public areas, filming as I explained the standard history, the features my family had always proudly claimed as Elias Chen's innovative vision. And what about you? The director asked as we finished the tour. How does it feel to be part of this legacy, working in the building your great-grandfather created? I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. Family legacies are complex, I said finally. What we celebrate publicly isn't always the complete story. The monarch has secrets that even the Chen family hasn't fully appreciated, until now. The director looked intrigued. What kind of secrets? You'll have to wait for the gala, I said with a smile. I think everyone will be surprised by what we're discovering about the monarch's true history. Later that evening, as I organized my findings, in my apartment, my mother paid an unexpected visit carrying a shopping bag. I brought you some nicer outfits for the inspection and gala, she said, looking around my space with poorly concealed dismay. Have you done anything with those throw pillows I brought? They're on the sofa, I pointed out. Mom, can I ask you something? Did you ever hear great-grandfather mention someone named Liu Weiming? My mother's expression flickered briefly. So briefly I might have missed it if I hadn't been watching closely. That doesn't sound familiar. Why? I found some old documents mentioning her in connection with the monarch, I said, deliberately vague. Just curious if her name ever came up in family stories. My mother busied herself arranging the clothes she'd brought. Your great-grandfather rarely discussed his business associates. It was a different time. He worked with many people who helped with various aspects of his projects. Helped, I repeated. Not collaborated with as equals? Rebecca, my mother, sighed. Why are you suddenly interested in ancient history? Shouldn't you be focusing on making sure this inspection goes smoothly? Vanessa has put so much work into the gala plans. I am focused on the inspection, I assured her. In fact, I've been preparing extensively. I think the inspector will find the monarch's history very interesting. My mother gave me a sharp look. The inspector is here to verify safety codes, not get a history lesson. Please don't complicate things with unnecessary details. After she left, I sat among my research materials, thinking about my family's consistent pattern, their determination to control which parts of our history were celebrated and which were conveniently forgotten. The monarch's story had been carefully curated for generations, with Liu Weiming's contributions systematically erased despite her genius. 2 days before the inspection, I received an unexpected ally. Mr. Gaines, the retired building manager, who had lived in my apartment before me, stopped by on the pretext of retrieving mail that had been forwarded to the building. "How are you settling in?" he asked, glancing around the space with what I now recognized as knowing eyes. "Actually," I said on impulse, "I've made some interesting discoveries about the building and about a woman named Liu Weiming." His weathered face broke into a smile. "So you found it. I wondered if you would." "You knew?" I asked, stunned. "Not everything," he admitted, "but enough. My grandfather worked on the construction crew of the Monarch. He told stories about the Chinese lady architect who really designed the place. I found that sealed wall when I moved in 30 years ago. Saw enough to know it was significant, but..." He shrugged. "Your family signs the checks. I decided some secrets should wait for the right caretaker. And you think that's me? You're the first Chen in generations to care more about the building than the prestige it brings," he said simply. "The inspector comes tomorrow, doesn't she? Patricia Diaz." I nodded, surprised he knew. "Good woman, thorough, respects history." He headed for the door, then paused. "Your great-grandfather wasn't a villain, you know. He gave Liu opportunities, when no one else would. But he was a man of his time, with all the limitations that implies." He tapped the wall where the hidden panel was located. "Whatever you decide to do with what you found, make sure it honors both their contributions." After he left, I made my final preparations for the inspection. Tomorrow, Patricia Diaz would discover the hidden spaces beneath the Monarch. Spaces that had been concealed for nearly a century. How that discovery unfolded, and how my family responded to it, would determine whether Liu Weiming's legacy remained buried or finally received the recognition it deserved. With a mix of anticipation and anxiety, I reviewed everything one last time: the historical documents, the structural analysis May had prepared, the photographs and letters proving Liu's central role in creating the building my family had claimed as solely our achievement for generations. The building inspection would begin at 9 a.m. By the end of tomorrow, the carefully constructed narrative of the Monarch and the Chen family legacy would be forever changed. Inspector Patricia Diaz arrived precisely at 9 a.m., dressed in a crisp charcoal pantsuit with a city ID badge clipped to her lapel. She was younger than I expected, perhaps early 40s, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing and an air of quiet authority that commanded respect. "Ms. Chen?" She extended her hand. "Patricia Diaz, Department of Building Safety, Historical Division." "Rebecca Chen," I replied, shaking her hand firmly. "Building Manager of the Monarch. Thank you for coming." "I've been looking forward to inspecting this property," she said, surprising me. "The Monarch is architecturally significant. One of the few pre-war luxury buildings with its original structural elements largely intact." Before I could respond, Vanessa appeared in the lobby, as if summoned by some sixth sense that someone important had arrived. She wore an outfit that somehow managed to look both casual and expensively curated, her hair and makeup flawless despite the early hour. "Inspector Diaz, I'm Vanessa Chen, event coordinator for our upcoming 85th anniversary gala. I trust my sister has everything ready for a quick and efficient inspection." Her smile was dazzling, but didn't quite reach her eyes. Patricia Diaz nodded politely, but remained focused on her tablet. "The inspection will take as long as necessary to ensure compliance with historical building safety codes. Given the monarch's age and significance, I anticipate a comprehensive review." Vanessa's smile faltered slightly. "Of course, but we're on a tight timeline with the gala preparations. Building safety takes precedence over event planning, Ms. Chen," Inspector Diaz stated firmly. "Now, shall we begin with the infrastructure? Areas, mechanical rooms, utility spaces, foundation access points?" "Actually," I interjected, "I've prepared a complete building tour that follows the original construction sequence. I think you'll find it most efficient for your evaluation." "Excellent approach," Diaz approved, making a note on her tablet. Vanessa looked between us, clearly calculating whether her presence was necessary for this technical portion of the inspection. "Well, I'll leave you to the basement things. Rebecca, our parents are coming at 11 to review the gala setup. We'll need your sign-off on the electrical requirements for the lighting installation." "I'll be available once the inspection is complete," I replied neutrally. After Vanessa departed for the penthouse, I turned to Inspector Diaz. "I should inform you that during my recent review of the building's systems, I discovered some architectural elements that don't appear in our current plans." Her interest visibly piqued. "Undocumented structural features?" "More than features," I said carefully. "An entire sub-level that's been sealed off for decades." Inspector Diaz's professional demeanor couldn't quite conceal her excitement. "Show me?" I led her not to the utility room entrance May and I had used, but to the north stairwell where we'd identified another access point. This would allow us to enter the hidden level from a different angle, giving Diaz a more comprehensive understanding of its scope. "This section of wall," I explained, pointing to what appeared to be an ordinary concrete surface, "doesn't match the thermal signature of the surrounding structure. According to the original blueprints I recently uncovered, there should be a passage behind it." "Original blueprints?" she questioned sharply. "Yes," I admitted. "Found in a sealed compartment in my apartment. I've brought copies for your review." I handed her the folder containing the digitized versions May had prepared. Diaz examined them with growing astonishment. "These are extraordinary. The structural innovation alone." "Wait." She looked up at me sharply. "These are signed by two architects, Elias Chen and Liu Wei-ming. I'm only familiar with Chen being associated with this building." "That's the other discovery we need to discuss," I said. "But first, let me show you what's behind this wall." Using the information from Liu's plans, I located the hidden release mechanism, disguised as an ordinary electrical junction box, and pressed it in the specific sequence noted in the margins of the blueprint. With a soft click, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow passage identical to the one May and I had discovered earlier. "Remarkable," Diaz breathed, switching on her industrial-grade flashlight. "This doesn't appear to be a later modification. The concrete, formulation, and reinforcement style match the original construction. It was built as part of the original structure," I confirmed, "but deliberately concealed from official records." We descended into the hidden sub-level, and I watched as Inspector Diaz's professional assessment transformed into undisguised admiration. She methodically documented everything: the innovative ventilation system, the structural reinforcements, the self-contained utilities that had allowed this space to remain functional despite decades of neglect. "This is far beyond 1930s building standards," she noted, examining a particularly ingenious support column design. "Some of these approaches weren't common practice until the 1960s. Who was Liu Wei-ming? Why isn't her name in any of our historical records?" I showed her the office area with the photograph of Elias and Liu standing together. then the cabinet containing their correspondence and design notes. Diaz spent nearly an hour reviewing the materials, her expression growing increasingly serious. "Ms. Chen," she said finally, "what you've discovered here isn't just a building code matter. It's a significant historical finding. Liu Wei-ming's contributions to this building represent groundbreaking architectural work that has been erased from the historical record." "I know," I replied quietly. "That's why I wanted you to see it, firsthand." "I'm going to need to bring in additional experts," she decided. "The historical preservation team, at minimum. This space needs to be properly documented and evaluated." Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Where are you?" "Parents are here. Everyone waiting in the penthouse. Inspection should have been done by now." "My family is expecting me upstairs," I explained to Diaz. "They're planning the 85th anniversary gala and don't yet know about any of this." She raised an eyebrow. "They don't know about a major structural element of their own building?" "The Chen family history with the monarch has been selectively preserved," I said carefully. Understanding dawned in her eyes. "I see. Well, this inspection certainly can't be completed today. There's far too much to evaluate properly. I'll need to schedule a follow-up with a full team." She checked her watch. "I should document the main systems as originally planned, so I can file the preliminary report. Shall we continue the standard inspection and then address your family together?" I nodded, relieved to have an ally in what I suspected would be a difficult conversation. We spent the next hour completing the regular inspection, with Diaz meticulously checking fire safety systems, electrical panels, and emergency exits. By the time we took the elevator to the penthouse, it was past noon, and according to the increasingly frantic texts from Vanessa, my family was furious at the delay. The penthouse was filled with people when we arrived. My parents, Vanessa, the event planner, the documentary crew, and representatives from several luxury brands who were sponsoring the gala. They were gathered around a scale model of the transformed lobby space, with Vanessa in the middle of what appeared to be an impassioned presentation. "Finally!" she exclaimed when she saw me. "We've been waiting forever. Is the inspection finished?" "So we can proceed with the installation approvals?" Inspector Diaz stepped forward. "Actually, Ms. Chen, the inspection has revealed significant findings that will require additional evaluation before any event permits can be issued." The room fell silent. My father stepped forward, his expression carefully controlled. "I'm James Chen, owner of the Monarch. What seems to be the problem, Inspector? I'm sure whatever concerns you have can be addressed promptly." Diaz was unintimidated. "Mr. Chen, your building manager has discovered an entire sub-level that doesn't appear in any of your current building plans. A sub-level that contains substantial historical documentation about the Monarch's original design and construction." All eyes turned to me. My mother's face had gone pale, while my father's expression hardened into something dangerous. "Rebecca," he said with forced calm, "what is this about?" I took a deep breath. "I found hidden architectural plans in my apartment, the basement apartment that used to be Mr. Gaines's residence. These plans show that the Monarch was designed not just by great-grandfather Elias, but by a partner named Liu Wei-ming, a female architect whose contributions have been erased from our family history." "This is ridiculous," my father scoffed. "Some old drafts by an assistant don't change the building's provenance." "She wasn't an assistant," I said firmly, pulling out the folder of documents I'd brought with me. "She was a full partner, and there's an entire shelter level beneath the building that she designed, a level that's still structurally sound after nearly a century." The documentary filmmaker had quietly begun recording, his camera capturing the unfolding drama. Vanessa noticed and tried to signal him to stop, but he pretended not to see. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," my mother suggested, eyeing the gathered crowd nervously. "Actually," Inspector Diaz interjected, As this impacts the building's historical designation and safety certification, it's a matter of public record. She turned to me. Ms. Chen, would you like to share what you've discovered about Liu Weiming's contributions to the monarch? It was the moment I'd been preparing for. With all eyes on me, including the documentary camera, I laid out the evidence methodically. The original blueprints with both signatures, the correspondence between Elias and Liu showing their collaborative process, the photographs documenting their partnership, the innovative structural elements that had been decades ahead of their time. The shelter level alone would qualify for historical protection, I explained, showing the detailed plans. Liu designed it to protect not just the wealthy residents, but the service staff who would have been overlooked in typical evacuation. Plans of that era, her ventilation system, structural reinforcements, and self-contained utilities were revolutionary. As I spoke, I could see the event planner and brand representatives exchanging impressed glances. The documentary filmmaker had moved closer, capturing every detail. Even Vanessa seemed momentarily forgotten as the true history of the monarch captivated everyone's attention. My father attempted to regain control of the narrative. This is all very interesting historical trivia, but it doesn't change the fact that Elias Chen built the monarch and established our family's legacy in this city. Actually, Mr. Chen, Diaz corrected, if these documents are authenticated, and they appear genuine to me, it significantly changes the historical record of this building. The monarch would be recognized not just as your grandfather's achievement, but as a pioneering example of a woman architect's work during an era when women, particularly immigrant women, were systematically excluded from the profession. This could be an incredible story, the documentary director said, unable to contain himself. The hidden history of the monarch, a female architect's vision finally revealed after 85 years. I saw the exact moment when Vanessa's calculating mind shifted from seeing this revelation as a threat to recognizing it as an opportunity. Her expression transformed from annoyance to sudden inspiration. A female architect erased from history, she mused aloud. Discovered just in time for our 85th anniversary celebration. She turned to the event planner. We need to pivot. The gala theme is now revealing the monarch's true legacy. We'll focus on Liu Weiming's groundbreaking work and my sister's discovery. My parents stared at her in disbelief. My father started to object, but Vanessa was already in full planning mode. The documentary should feature the hidden shelter level. It's visually spectacular and has an incredible human story. We'll need to carefully restore it, of course. The brands will love the female empowerment angle. It's perfect for their marketing narrative. And Rebecca, she turned to me with newfound appreciation. You'll need to be centrally featured. You uncovered this history after all. Inspector Diaz watched this transformation with barely concealed amusement. Before any event can proceed, we'll need to complete a full structural assessment of the hidden level and update all building documentation. I'll be bringing in the historical preservation team tomorrow. We'll incorporate the inspection process into the documentary, Vanessa decided. The meticulous preservation of architectural history, it adds authenticity. My mother, recognizing the inevitability of this new direction, attempted to save face. Our family has always valued the monarch's historical significance. This additional information only enhances its importance. Only my father remained visibly resistant, his expression dark as the conversation swirled around him. He pulled me aside while Vanessa captivated the room with her rapidly evolving vision for the reimagined gala. What do you think you're doing? He demanded in a low voice. This building, this legacy, has been in our family for generations. Now, you want to give credit to some unknown woman? She wasn't unknown to great-grandfather, I replied calmly. He preserved all this evidence. He wanted the truth to come out eventually, and her work deserves recognition. This will change everything about how people see the monarch, how they see us. Maybe it should, I said. Maybe our family's real legacy isn't about taking credit, but about creating something extraordinary, even if part of that meant working with someone society wouldn't accept at the time. He had no answer for that, but his expression suggested our conversation was far from over. As the impromptu meeting broke up, with Vanessa leading the excited group to tour potential exhibition spaces for Liu's work, Inspector Diaz approached me again. "The Historical Division will want to interview you extensively about your discovery," she said. "And fair warning, once this becomes public, there will be significant academic and media interest." "I understand," I replied. "I just want to make sure Liu Weiming finally receives the recognition she deserves." "Based on what I've seen today," Diaz said with a smile, "I'd say that's now inevitable. Sometimes buildings keep their secrets until exactly the right moment, and the right person comes along to reveal them." As everyone filed out, I remained in the penthouse for a moment, looking out through the floor-to-ceiling windows that had once symbolized everything I'd been denied. The view was still spectacular, the luxury still evident in every detail, but somehow it all seemed less important now. The real treasure of the monarch wasn't its penthouse or its prestigious address. It was the brilliant, hidden legacy that had been waiting all these years in the foundation, in the very walls that Liu Ai had designed to stand the test of time. The building code inspection had revealed far more than safety violations or undocumented spaces. It had uncovered the truth about who we were, as a building, as a family, and as inheritors of a legacy far more complex and remarkable than the simplistic story we'd told ourselves for generations. And from my vantage point in what had once been dismissively called the basement, I had discovered what those in the penthouse had never bothered to see. 3 months after the inspection that changed everything, I stood in the transformed sublevel of the Monarch, now officially named the Liu Weiming Innovation Center. What had once been a hidden shelter had been carefully restored and converted into a museum-quality exhibition space that would be officially unveiled at tonight's gala. The shelter's original architectural elements remained intact, but now they were highlighted with tasteful lighting and informative displays that explained Liu's revolutionary design approaches. Her drafting table had been returned to its original position in what had been her private office, surrounded by her tools and personal effects that we'd discovered in storage trunks sealed since the 1960s. "Ms. Chen? The Times reporter is here, for your interview," called Jasmine, my new assistant. Once word of our discovery had spread through architectural and historical circles, the Monarch had been inundated with interest. What had begun as a simple 85th anniversary celebration had evolved into a major cultural event, with Liu Weiming's name now mentioned alongside pioneering female architects like Julia Morgan and Marion Mahoney Griffin. The reporter, a thoughtful woman with a background in architectural history, walked slowly through the exhibition, taking in the detailed timeline of Liu's life and work that now adorned the walls. "This is extraordinary," she remarked. "To think this space existed beneath the building all these years, completely undocumented." "Not completely," I corrected, pointing to the original blueprints displayed in a climate-controlled case. "Liu and my great-grandfather documented everything, meticulously. The plans were just selectively shared with the outside world." "And how has your family responded to these revelations?" she asked, notebook poised. I considered my answer carefully. The past 3 months had brought seismic shifts not just to the Monarch, but to the dynamics within the Chen family. "They've adapted in their own ways," I said diplomatically. "Change is rarely comfortable, especially when it challenges long-held narratives." What I didn't share was the heated argument that had erupted the day after the inspection, when my father had discovered I'd already contacted the Historical Society about formally adding Liu Weiming's name to the Monarch's historical designation. "You had no right," he'd shouted, his face flushed with anger. "This building is our legacy, the Chen legacy." "It's Liu's legacy too," I'd responded calmly. "Great-grandfather knew that. That's why he preserved all this evidence." "He preserved." It privately, my father had countered. If he'd wanted this made public, he would have done it himself. Times were different then, I'd pointed out. What wasn't possible in his lifetime is possible now. Don't you think he'd want Liu to finally receive recognition for her genius? That question had struck something in him. A memory, perhaps, of his own grandfather's values. He'd fallen silent, then left without another word. Our relationship remained strained, but he'd stopped actively opposing the changes. Your sister seems to have embraced the discovery enthusiastically, the reporter noted, breaking into my thoughts. Her social media campaign about Liu Wei-ming has gained significant traction. I smiled despite myself. If there was one completely predictable outcome of this whole situation, it was Vanessa's ability to position herself advantageously within the new narrative. Vanessa recognizes a compelling story, I acknowledged. And she's been effective at bringing attention to Liu's achievements. What I didn't add was that Vanessa had completely rebranded herself as a champion of overlooked female creators, launching a podcast called Hidden Brilliance that featured interviews with contemporary women in architecture and design. Her follower count had tripled, and she'd recently secured a book deal for a coffee table volume on female architects whose contributions had been erased or diminished. And you've moved into a new role as well, the reporter observed. Executive, Director of Building Heritage and Operations, a position created specifically for you, I understand. This was the most unexpected transformation of all. 2 weeks after the inspection, the Chen Family Trust, which technically owned the monarch, had called an emergency meeting. My mother had presented a restructuring proposal that elevated me to a new executive position, with authority over both the building's operations and its historical preservation. The monarch's historical significance has increased dramatically, she'd explained in the formal, business-like tone she reserved for family business matters. We need someone who understands both its operational needs and its architectural importance. Rebecca is uniquely qualified. My father had remained stonily silent throughout the meeting, but hadn't opposed the appointment. Vanessa, surprisingly, had been its most vocal supporter. It makes perfect sense, she'd declared. I'll handle the public-facing aspects, the events, media relations, and brand partnerships, while Rebecca manages the building itself and its historical programs. We each play to our strengths. It was the first time in our adult lives that Vanessa had spoken of us as complementary rather than competitive, and I'd been too shocked to respond immediately. The discovery changed more than just the monarch's historical record, I told the reporter, choosing my words carefully. It changed how we see ourselves as its caretakers. After the interview concluded, I made my final inspection rounds before the gala. The event would be dramatically different from Vanessa's original vision of a glitzy celebration of luxury living. Instead, it would center on the unveiling of the Liu Wei-ming Innovation Center, with prominent architects, historians, and preservation experts in attendance alongside the social elite Vanessa had originally courted. As I passed through the lobby, now adorned with informational displays about the monarch's true architectural history, I noticed my father standing alone, examining a large photograph of Elias Chen and Liu Wei-ming standing together at the building's original groundbreaking ceremony. "Dad," I acknowledged, stopping beside him. He nodded, still looking at the photograph. The Historical Society found more pictures in their archives. Apparently, they were misfiled all these years. Or deliberately misplaced, I suggested gently. He sighed. "Your mother told me something interesting yesterday. Her grandmother, my grandmother, once mentioned a Chinese lady architect who worked with Elias. We all assumed it was just a confused memory of an elderly woman. None of us ever thought to explore it further. Because it didn't fit the story we were telling ourselves," I said. "Because it didn't fit the story we were told," he corrected. "Each generation inherited the narrative and passed it on without questioning." He turned to me. "Except you." It was as close to an acknowledgement as I was likely to get. I accepted it with a nod. "The basement apartment," he said after a moment. It wasn't an afterthought or a punishment. It was where all this began, where Liu worked, where she and Elias planned everything. "I know," I replied. "I've moved her drafting table back there, actually. The exhibition has her public work, but I wanted to keep something of her in her original space." He looked at me with new understanding. "You still live there, even though you could move anywhere in the building now." "It feels right," I said simply. "That space has history. Important history." My father nodded slowly, then gestured to the photograph. "They look like equals in this picture. Partners." They were, I confirmed. According to their letters, they had tremendous respect for each other's talents. Elias had the business connections and social position that allowed their work to be built. Liu had the technical brilliance and innovative vision that made that work exceptional. And neither could have succeeded alone, my father murmured, almost to himself. Before we could continue this unprecedented conversation, Vanessa swept into the lobby surrounded by her usual entourage of assistants and photographers. She wore a striking architectural-inspired gown that somehow managed to be both avant-garde and flattering. "There you both are," she exclaimed. "The documentary crew needs final interviews before guests arrive, and the New Yorker writer wants additional quotes about Liu's influence on modern, sustainable design principles." She paused, taking in our serious expressions. "Am I interrupting something important?" "Just looking at history," my father said, his voice gruff but not unkind. Vanessa glanced at the photograph. "They made quite a team, didn't they? Hiding in plain sight all these years." She turned to me with unexpected sincerity. "Like the building inspector said that day, sometimes secrets reveal themselves at exactly the right moment to exactly the right person." I blinked, surprised to hear my own thoughts echoed back to me by my sister. "The gala starts in 2 hours," she continued, back to her efficient self. "Rebecca, the preservation committee wants a private tour of the shelter level before the public unveiling. Dad, the mayor has requested you join his table for dinner." As they walked away together, I marveled at how Vanessa had effortlessly incorporated our father into her new world order. She would always land on her feet, always find a way to position herself advantageously. But for once, her adaptability was serving something larger than her own ambition. I made my way back to my apartment, no longer the basement, but now proudly called the Architect's Studio, in the Monarch's updated directory. The space had been transformed not with luxury finishes or expensive furnishings, but with purpose and meaning. Liu's drafting table stood by the window, restored to its original condition. The walls displayed copies of her early sketches for the Monarch. And the hidden compartment where I'd found the original documents remained, though now it contained a journal of my own observations about the building and its history. As I changed for the gala, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 3 months. The inspection that was meant to be a routine bureaucratic exercise had instead uncovered a hidden history that transformed not just a building, but the lives of everyone connected to it. May arrived just as I was finishing dressing, looking elegant, in a tailored suit. After her crucial role in authenticating Liu's work, she had been hired as the Monarch's consulting structural engineer, with special responsibility for maintaining the historical integrity of Liu's innovative systems. "Ready for the big reveal?" she asked, handing me a small package. "I brought you something for good luck." Inside was a vintage drafting compass, similar to the one visible in Liu's hands in several photographs. "It belonged to my grandmother," May explained. She wasn't allowed to study engineering formally, but she taught herself from books and eventually worked as a calculator for a bridge company. She would have admired Liu and you. Deeply touched, I carefully placed the compass on Liu's drafting table. "It belongs here, with her spirit." "Speaking of spirits," May said with a sly smile, I heard an interesting rumor from the construction crew working on the exhibition space. Several of them reported feeling like they were being watched while they worked, like someone was checking their measurements and making sure they got the details right. The monarch has good bones, I said, smiling at the thought of Lu's perfectionist, Ghost supervising the restoration of her work. The building knows who really created it. As we made our way upstairs to the main event, I paused in the lobby, now transformed into a celebration of both Elias Chen and Liu Wei-ming's collaborative vision. Their photographs hung side by side, equal in size and prominence. The architectural models showcased their joint innovations. The historical timeline acknowledged both their contributions. The hidden shelter level would open to the public tonight, revealing Liu's most forward-thinking designs. The spaces created to protect not just the wealthy residents above, but the service staff who had been invisible to most architects of that era. Her compassionate engineering, once concealed behind walls of prejudice and convention, would now be studied by architects and engineers from around the world. Vanessa appeared at the top of the grand staircase, every inch the poised hostess in, her architectural gown. "Rebecca, the press is asking for joint photos of us, the Chen sisters who uncovered and championed the monarch's true history." She descended with practiced grace, then surprised me by taking my hand. "We make a good team, don't we? When we're not competing for the same spotlight." For once, her words held no trace of manipulation or calculation, just a simple acknowledgement of truth. "Different spotlights suit us better anyway," I replied with a smile. As we moved toward the waiting photographers, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in the original brass elevator doors. I no longer saw someone relegated to the background, overlooked and undervalued. I saw the woman who had uncovered a buried truth, who had changed the narrative not just for Liu Wei-ming, but for the Chen family itself. The basement that was meant to diminish me had instead elevated me. The history my family had tried to simplify had become our greatest strength, and Liu Wei-ming's hidden legacy had finally found its voice through the most unlikely advocate, the Chen who preferred the foundation to the penthouse. The building. Inspector had been right that day. Sometimes secrets reveal themselves at exactly the right moment, to exactly the right person. And sometimes, the view from below shows you truths that those at the top will never see. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.